Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Art Equals Life podcast, episode 1. I'm your host, JT Dubs.
And I am co-host Moose.
So, Moose, it sounds like there's someone crying in the background. Can you tell me a little bit about what's going on there?
She's actually not crying. She is adding in her input that she is also a co-host.
Yes. Please introduce our third co-host.
This is good old JoJo.
How you doing, JoJo? That's awesome. Great to hear. So, Moose, what you been up to lately? Sounds like a lot of baby stuff.
Sounds like a lot of hoopla. Other than the mom life, I got my job back as a substitute teacher for, our county schools. So I'll be going back to that. Luckily with that, if I work at least 2 days a month, I get to keep the job. So it's just kind of something to bring in a few extra bucks and keep me out of the house so I don't, get cabin fever like crazy. Other than that, just the stay-at-home mom life. Our third co-host is amazed by Pokemon, the Indigo League, right now.
Yeah, I do remember spending quite a bit of time as a kid watching Pokemon.
Oh yeah, same here. It's kind of crazy the way that they've changed so much. Like, do you remember the game Pokemon Go that came out back in when we were in high school? Like 2015?
No, man, I've never heard of Pokemon Go. What is that?
Stop. Well, anyway, for people who may not know, with Pokemon
If you've
Go,
lived under a rock for the last 6 years.
right, you can go over. Oh, actually, I don't know how you couldn't know about it because there were so many people that were literally dying because they weren't paying attention to the road when they would cross the street, or they would do it while they were driving.
It was sort of this weird summer where I remember like everybody was like kind of kumbaya playing Pokemon Go for a little bit. It was kind of
Everyone
cool.
was getting together and going Pokemon hunting together.
Yeah. And then it turned into, someone got kidnapped, someone walked into the wrong neighborhood, someone died. It didn't take long for things to get dark, as they tend to do in
Oh, good old
90s.
America. But yes, with Pokemon Go, I've noticed that there are so many new Pokemons. Back in our day with the Indigo League, there was only 150. Now there's like...
Back in my day, we only had 151 Pokemon. Now they got 972.
Well, I heard they got about 700 of them Pokemons going on around here now.
Back in my day, the Pokemons made sense, but now the Pokemons, you got a car key one, you got a chandelier, you got a garbage bag. What the hell kind of shit they doing to Pokemon now?
And then they have that shit on South Park while they were making the Chi Pokemons.
The Chin Pokemon?
Chipokemon.
You been watching any of the new South Park, Moose?
Yes. I actually just recently watched the post-COVID, the return of the COVID, when it was all of them grown up. And, yeah, that was very different. I love how, the Alexa was built into the car. I love how Mark and Trey, isn't that... Yeah, Mark and Trey, right?
Trey and Matt.
Trey and Matt, that's right. I always forget Matt's name. Sorry, Matt, don't slander me. But I always, just love their style of just making fun of how everyone just freaks out over the smallest things. They're pretty spot on with a lot of stuff, and their humor is just so, twisted, but it's freaking hilarious.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, last night, I won't spoil it, but last night I watched the latest episode of the new season, and they kind of put a little twist on like a character that we've known since like the beginning of the show. And it's interesting how, even though it's very much like The Simpsons and that it's been around forever, they managed to make it fresh like all the time. I never really get sick of South Park. Like even when they sort of seem like they might be about to jump the shark, they always kind of come back with something cool. So it's like for every kind of meh, not so great episode, there's like 3 or 4 great ones. So it's like they're still keeping it going, which is great. The show is called Art Equals Life. You might wonder, does art equals life? I would say yes.
Does
But
life
the art we're
equal
talking
art?
about today is going to be a film that came out pretty recently, but it's been out for a minute, so like we'll go ahead and say it, spoiler warning. If you haven't seen Spider-Man No Way Home, not Far From Home, because I keep accidentally calling it Far From Home. It's Spider-Man No Way Home. If you haven't seen it yet, do yourself a favor and maybe skip ahead in the podcast a little bit. So,
Yes, and if you want me to add in a little something here, I absolutely love Tom Holland as Spider-Man. I do love Tobey Maguire the most. I grew up with him being my Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield does do a good job. Spoiler alerts, I'm very sorry. Obviously, they are all three in the movie together. I
in what has
like.
been it's been called the worst kept secret in Hollywood. We were talking about though, you said Tom Holland was a good Spider-Man. So what are your thoughts on him compared to the other two? Because
So,
the other two have very strong fan bases. Like Tobey Maguire is the one everyone grew up with, but there's kind of this like hipster demographic that like really loves Andrew Garfield, and they will like even though they'll admit that his movies weren't the best, they will swear by him being the best Spider-Man ever. So it's like
so
they've kind of both got their diehard fans, but
right.
Tom Holland seems like he's still kind of working into the role in a lot of ways, and we don't really I don't think he's fully formed yet, even though the movie kind of does set him up more so than before.
And here's what's so funny, Jay. Um, People don't seem to realize that, okay, one of the number one reasons why people love Tom Holland as Spider-Man is because he portrays a young Spider-Man. He portrays this teenager in high school. He looks younger. He gives off this more childish vibe.
He's the Marty McFly of the Spider-Man.
But the thing is, dude, is if you remember in the first Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire, they also had him in high school too. Now, yes, he looked like a freaking 40-year-old man in high school, but I mean, they still
Yeah.
they still portrayed him in like as a high school student. It's like people seem to forget that they made him a high schooler too.
Here's what I like about Tom Holland in this Spider-Man movie. I think he really does a great job, and this is what I've liked about Tom Holland since the beginning. He's not a perfect Peter Parker by any means. I don't
Mm-mm.
think I don't think any of the live action Spider-Men have really been perfect. But what I like about Tom Holland is he takes a lot of what we liked about Toby, that Toby was really humble and very grounded and kind of this meek, shy guy. I like that he sort of takes some of that, but he's got a little bit more spunk to him, like
Hmm.
Andrew Garfield had.
Yeah.
And it kind of mixes together into, like I said, not a perfect Peter Parker, but definitely like a very competent Peter Parker in terms of the characterization. Because I like both sides of that personality. I liked what Toby was doing. And I
Right.
also, even though Andrew wasn't my favorite, I didn't like that Andrew was kind of a jerk in some of his movies, but I
Yeah.
did like that he had some kind of attitude and spunk to him, and he was very quippy. I liked that he had that attitude kind of. Tom kind of mixes those together. So I think the only thing that was lacking with Tom was that he just came into these movies a little too immature, a little too childish. He didn't really feel like Spider-Man. He kind of felt like Iron Man's sidekick. He
Of
felt kind of
course.
like Iron Man's like Robin to his Batman kind of thing.
And they really
Um,
showed that. They really showed that in Far From Home, the second one, when he
yeah,
passed away and he was just like, I'm nothing without him. You know, I don't know how I'm going to be able to go on as Spider-Man without him being here because he was my mentor, he was my pal. You know, it's like he had this big weight on his shoulders because Tony brought him in. Okay, he was nowhere near prepared. But he did great, you know. But the thing is that they they didn't allow him to really grow up because I mean, think about it. He literally was brought. If you go back to like Civil War, they brought him in and was like, "Hey, we need you to be an Avenger. We need you to like fight for the whole world right now." So it was like the kid never really got to grow up. I mean, he was just rushed into battle like that. And then it was, hey, this guy at the snap of his fingers can annihilate half of the freaking population.
normally Spider-Man lives a double life, Peter Parker and Spider-Man, and that's it.
And then not to mention he got
But this
blipped.
version, well, this version, I feel like he lives a triple life because he's Peter Parker, who goes to school. He's friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, who's helping New York, and he's the Avenger Spider-Man. But what I really like about No Way Home is that they transition him from at the beginning, he's still kind of this goofy kid who's making impulsive mistakes. He's not really thinking about the bigger picture. And he's still kind of has this crutch of Tony's technology and all these suits at his disposal, all these tools. And as the film goes on, his life totally changes. He loses everything and he becomes a man. He fully matures into the Spider-Man. And but he,
Right.
he has the with great power comes great responsibility moment with his Aunt May dying. He has to give up his best friend and his girlfriend in order to save
Not only
the
that, but he
world.
literally had to give up everybody. I mean,
Yeah, it's
so it's
crazy. I
like
mean, he
literally not even a single person knows who he is. I mean, all the Avengers that were still alive, he can't go to them. They don't know who he is. His best friend, his girlfriend, his Aunt May has passed away. Happy doesn't remember him, but it's like at the end of the movie they show how they have that connection together still because of Aunt May. But he's like, I don't know who he is. All I know is that we both know this woman from Spider-Man.
but this one it really felt like with this trilogy, it felt like you started things off so gradually. The first film is really just about him in high school messing up. That's it.
Right.
It's like a very small scale movie. The second one, it gets a little bigger. He's, kind of facing these otherworldly beings, or so he thinks. He's sort of dealing with things on a more global, a bigger scale. And then the third film, it escalates completely to where he's facing off against Doctor Strange in this like mirror dimension, and he's fighting villains from other dimensions and universes. So it's like it's all about growing up. I think is what the theme of this trilogy was. It was growing up, and I think that the value that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield brought is, yes, it was fan service to bring them back, but they were there to help Peter grow up because you had Toby, who really was the fully adult Spider-Man, and you had Andrew, who was kind of the young adult Spider-Man. And, Toby's kind of got it all figured out. Andrew is still going through a lot. He's still dealing with a lot of loss. He's still traumatized by losing Gwen in his movies. And then you've got Tom, who's really still at the beginning of his journey. So, I mean, they're all at different points, but they all help each other. And I mean, even you've got Andrew Garfield gets some resolution to his character because he ends up saving MJ when she falls and almost dies like Gwen did. You have some conclusion with Toby. He's kind of trying to pass on the lessons to Tom that he didn't learn the right way originally in his movie.
Right.
So they're all helping each other. It's not just them helping Tom. Tom is helping them as well, and they're all kind of growing into the best version of their Peter Parker. Because I think all of them are at their best here. I mean, they all are bringing it, and I mean, they're really doing an excellent job. And I mean, it's just it's incredible. But they pulled this movie off, especially given the fact that they were clearly dealing with some restrictions with COVID, and they were dealing with just kind of trying to. I mean, they pumped this movie out in like 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
which yeah, that's a decent amount of time. But you had the Marvel Sony deal that fell through originally like 2 years ago, and then
Oh
they
yeah,
kind of
they
came to a
thought
new
that he was
deal.
losing his job.
Yeah, yeah, but like when you think about like this movie wasn't planned for a long time. They threw this together in like probably under 2 years. So it's a miracle that they made it as good as they did because it was really well done, and it didn't feel like a movie that was rushed out. So some of these like Marvel movies feel kind of like they're rushed out because they're just assembly line production, with all the computer animators and all this. But I mean, this one had a few CGI moments that were a little iffy, but I mean, it really did feel like a movie that was not rushed at all, even though obviously they were to some extent. It felt like they really took the time, and I don't know, it does seem like some of this wasn't planned and some of it was. It seems like his character arc, like Tom's, this was probably the direction they were always planning on going with him, but I definitely know that some of these details, like I don't know that this story was always planned. And I went to go see this opening night, and it was kind of magical after 2 years of just not really getting to have like a fun, crowded movie experience. And I mean, everybody got COVID to see this movie, I guess, but
Well, I'm most definitely gonna have to agree with you on the whole. It brought out the best of all three of them in the movie, especially because with Toby and Andrew, their versions of Peter Parker, their movies were like, let's kill the enemy and then they're done.
or the
Um,
enemy kind of accidentally kills themselves, kind of thing. But
right.
you're right.
Right. What I'm saying is that the enemy dies. But then they come to with them all coming together and they met Tom Holland's Peter Parker. He's like, "No, there's got to be a better way. We can save them. We can bring out the best of them. These people, they're still people." I mean, that's another thing about Tom Holland's Spider-Man that I really like is that, he doesn't just see people as their villain. You know what I mean? Like their villainous self. Like
That's something about him that's really unique, I think, is that
he still sees the good in people even after they've done something so horrible.
and I think a lot of that is because he's the youngest one and he's got that childish sort of naivete, but also sort of that hopeful nature that's really unique to him because he brings such a different energy to it than I think any of the other ones have. The other Spider-Man had some sort of motivation that was a bit darker, a bit more raw.
Right.
And I think one thing that was fairly interesting about this Peter Parker was that he hasn't faced a whole lot of loss up until this point. Now, I don't know whether Uncle Ben is canon or not in this one. I am completely unsure. They haven't really
No,
specified.
as I said, they
Um,
haven't mentioned Uncle Ben at all.
I mean, so he's been mentioned a little bit in terms of, like, he's been hinted at, but they've never mentioned him.
Right.
And then obviously he loses Tony, but that's not really a dark motivator. That's just more of something sad that happened to him. Tony wasn't family. Tony was just someone he
His
looked up to a
mentor.
lot and cared
Yeah,
about. Yeah.
his hero.
Yeah, but he wasn't angry when Tony died. He was sad, but he got through it. But it wasn't like the brutality of losing that loved one that the other two Spider-Men had. So going into this film, he's still very hopeful. He's still very naive. He doesn't quite have that chip on his shoulder yet because he hasn't lost anyone super, super close to him yet.
Right.
Or at least that hasn't been focused on much. But man, when he loses Aunt May, that was hard. I mean, even watching that the first time, I had goosebumps. I mean, it really, really gave me chills watching it because
Oh
at a
yeah,
certain
that
point you
broke
see
my
her get
heart.
hit by the goblin with the glider, and they kind of try to play it off like, oh, maybe she won't die, maybe she's gonna get up and she's gonna be okay. But no, I mean, then she falls down again and she dies. And
Mhm. She
I
was
think
trying to
that
hide the
moment
fact
was so
that she
raw.
got hurt.
Yeah, because even in her last moment, even at her weakest point,
She
she
wanted to
was
be
still trying to look
strong.
out for him.
Right.
Yeah, she wanted to look out for him and make sure he was okay and give him the lesson that he needed in that moment because she was gone. She was there was no helping her at that point.
I feel like
And
another so I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I feel like
no, you're good.
another lesson that was being taught in this movie was you can't always have what you want. And the
That and
reason
you just can't have it all, you know? You
yeah,
can't have
right. And the
everything you
reason
want
why I
all the
say
time.
that is all because people want it to be a happier ending. And the third movie it ended kind of sad. And that enrages people. Like for example, with Infinity War, people were pissed. They were like, "Oh my god, our heroes, they lost." Like what an ending to a movie. You know what I mean?
I think I like those types of endings more, if I'm gonna be honest.
Because it gets you at the edge of your chair, you know what I mean? I
It
feel
just
like
feels like it has more of an impact, more weight to it when
but
I
see,
don't know.
we as people, because we are empathetic, sympathetic people, because of these two qualities that we have as people, we crave for that happy ending because it's like if it ends sad, then it's almost like people lose hope. And it's rare when there are people like us who are like, no, I like how it ended like that. It gives it a twist. It's different. It was, the plot was great. Everything was great. There was nothing wrong with the movie. There's nothing wrong with it showing a little bit of reality.
This was the mature way to end it, and I'm glad they did because, I mean, imagine if the movie ended somehow they found some loophole, and Doctor Strange fixes it all, and Peter Parker gets everything he wants.
Right.
People might have liked that movie that ending for like the first day or the first weekend it was out, but within a week you would have had everyone bitching, being like, "Man,
It's
Tom
so
Holland never learns his
typical.
lesson. Tom Holland
Right.
is such his Tom Holland Spider-Man is just a stupid kid that never learned his lesson, and everyone bails him out all the time. He's
Of
never going to learn.
course.
With great power comes great responsibility." Like no, the weight of his decisions, the cause and effect that he deals with, the fact that now his life is pretty much ruined. The only thing he has left is being Spider-Man. He's completely alone, and that can lead to so many interesting, cool things in the future.
And I liked the ending of the movie. I think that they'll take that with the ending of this movie, that it'll teach him the lesson with him being alone on how to become a man and how to learn how to be by himself.
Yeah, I mean, it's very fitting that the Spider-Man that everybody kind of crapped on for a few years for being too much of a kid, too immature. It's almost kind of fitting that his arc, at least for now, is ending with him growing up, and I mean, in quite so much like the most literal way he could. As someone who sort of felt like I hadn't gotten to really have fun watching a movie in a while, like there's been plenty of films in 2020 and 2021 that I enjoyed, but I really hadn't felt a really fun theater going experience in a few years. So getting to have that again, that was really special and really fun. And I can't think of a better franchise to celebrate for 20 years that, sort of capped off in such a fun way. And now a word from our sponsors. Have you ever been sitting at home with nothing in the pantry to eat, but you don't feel like getting in your car and driving 5 minutes into town? Try Scam Jam. You like your food hot and fresh? Think again. With Scam Jam, your lazy ass gets to wait from 15 minutes up to 3 hours for cold, soggy, unsatisfying food with the consistency of a wet diaper.
Man, I'm really hungry. There's nothing to eat in this stupid house other than all of Mom's keto diet bullshit. I have all of this money, but I don't want to get up and drive.
Hey, kid. You can't drive anyway, so you want to try Scam Jam?
Who are you? How did you get into my house?
Doesn't matter, kid. Just listen up. With Scam Jam, you can get your favorite $5 meal for only $47.95, with the guilt trip of having to tip.
That actually sounds kind of great. Thanks, creepy guy.
Go to the App Store and purchase Scam Jam today. Scam Jam, a fraction of the quality for quadruple the price. And we're back. All right, so Moose, one thing we didn't talk about much in the last segment was Spider-Man No Way Home has some pretty kick-ass villains. What were your thoughts on the villains?
Oh my God, Green Goblin. I was so happy when I saw him come back. When I saw him
Willem
in the
Dafoe
trailer,
was so scary, dude.
I
so
love
scary.
him. Willem Dafoe is such a phenomenal actor. He is fantastic. I was so happy to see that they were bringing them back. I mean, I was literally like, I screamed when I saw him in that trailer. I was so excited.
I mean, between him and Alfred Molina, it's like it's cool because they both embody such different villains. It's like Green Goblin is very much just almost pure evil. He's so much fun. He's so crazy. But then with Alfred Molina's Doc Ock, he's a lot more of a sort of tragic villain, and you really feel for him and it's sort of his life, because he really is this nice guy who just loses everything and goes completely insane. His only fault really being his own hubris.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he's one reason why Spider-Man 2 is still the best film in the franchise by far.
Of course.
So, and then, I mean, Willem Dafoe, man, like you can't even, that performance. I mean, he was great in the original, but he was even better in this one, honestly. So the theme of today's episode, sort of the art that relates to life, is we're going to be talking a little bit about rehabilitation. And I thought that this film did a pretty good job reflecting that, especially because sort of what we touched on earlier is that Tom Holland's Spider-Man, he sees that these villains are going to die if they get sent back to their own universe. So, Doctor Strange is like, well, we got to set the universe back. They're not our problem. We're going to send them back and they're just going to have to die. And Tom Holland goes up against Doctor Strange and fights him just because he wants to save these people. He believes that he can redeem these villains. I'll be honest, when I first saw it, I thought this is a very unique take on not just Spider-Man villains, but just comic book movies in general. We oftentimes see these villains, and Marvel has had a lot of really badly written villains. So it's interesting to have this perspective of not only are these villains three-dimensional characters, not only are we going to flesh them out really well and make you really feel for them, but also we think we can save them and we're going to try. And that was just so refreshing to me. I don't know. What did you think about it, Moose?
My thing about it is that it's kind of funny that our theme is rehabilitation, because if you think about it, each villain has like their own mental health disorder, and it's almost like Tom Holland's Spider-Man tries to say, hey, you know what? Even though you are the way that you still have good in you. Everything is okay. And I can do something to show you that you're worth it.
Yeah, it's still treating them like they're human and that their lives have value, as opposed to they're bad. We got to throw them out. We got to push
kill
them away.
them.
Yeah, it's like he's saying basically like he's not saying that they're perfect. He's not saying that they necessarily are
Now,
going to
I
be these
will
these
say,
great guys, but he is giving them the second chance, and that's kind of beautiful.
right. And I feel like another thing about it is with the fact that he's giving them a second chance. When they go back to their own universe, they're going to have to overcome a lot of things that they faced and a lot of things that they did. But they can instead of dying, they can go home and they can show that they're changed, that they've been given this new hope, this second chance to be better. It sucks that we won't get the peace of mind to know like what happens at the end, but the fact that we were given some sort of glimpse of kindness throughout the movie with this, even though like they fought against him there for a while, because I mean they of course they didn't trust him at first.
And they're still villains. I
Right.
mean,
And
they
that's
don't
the
get cured
thing.
until the end.
Right. They don't get cured until the end, with all three of them working together. It's almost like Spider-Man, Tom Holland Spider-Man, he couldn't do it alone. He had to have the other two in order to do it, because it's like those villains needed to face their Peter Parkers in order for it to be set right.
And that's what's kind of cool about the film is that it really does resolve a lot of plot threads from all three of the Spider-Man series.
Franchises. Yeah.
Yeah. So, on the topic of rehabilitation, I did a little research because I figured, we're going to be talking about this topic. I want to be well read on the subject. So I did read an article called The Benefits of Rehabilitative Incarceration. It's by Gordon B. Dahl and Magne Mogstad. I hope I'm not butchering your name, but yeah. So they wrote this article. I read a little bit of it. Basically, it talks about how in the U.S. we have kind of this really big incarceration issue. A lot of times, people that are in prison, they become repeat offenders, and they have a very hard time getting employment. The U.S. prison rates have been going up for the last 40 years, whereas somewhere like Norway, they've actually been staying steadily about the same. Norway prisons, their criminal justice system focuses a lot more on rehabilitation. And so they offer like education, job training, drug treatment, mental health treatment. They offer these things for prisoners so that they can help them reintegrate into society after they serve their sentence. This contrasts with the US, which has longer sentencing and usually just kind of forces them into labor where they are making next to nothing. They're treated a lot like slaves. In the US, we need to definitely embrace that mindset a little more. And I'm not saying you let dangerous people back on the streets with a slap on the wrist. I mean, I do think you need to shape these people, these individuals who have done wrong. You need to shape them into better citizens and hopefully reform them into better people that can go back into society if they've paid their due.
I feel like with the fact, and I know that there's a difference between like jail and prison,
Yeah,
and like you
for sure.
said, a lot of places have, lesser sentences and they treat people like humans still. I mean,
So
there are people who are wrongly incriminated, that were innocent. There are people that are, spending lifetimes and things for something that just deserved a slap on a wrist. It's
I mean,
almost like
like
it's almost like
nonviolent drug crimes.
right.
Nonviolent drug
It's
crimes are the biggest reason why people go to prison. And say you're addicted to meth or heroin or something, it's like that's a problem that needs to be fixed with some rehab, and you need some help. Not, oh well, you did this drug, so or you owned this drug, so now you're going to be put in prison for 20 years. Like that's ridiculous.
it's almost like we have forgotten what it's like in order to not exactly be soft, but to have a heart. It's like no one even wants to give someone a chance in order to be better. It's like these people either have to, like you say, be in a gang or find a clique that's all about Jesus Christ. And that's all
Yeah.
they get. That's all they have. It's like our people aren't allowed to have that chance. I wish
Well,
that
we
they
treat
could make
them, it's almost like they did something wrong, therefore they deserve no dignity, no respect. They are no longer human in a way. They're treated like they're not human.
and then not only that, but think of the trauma that these people are gonna have to go through that are spending way too much time in there. They're having to learn how to live in this nasty, dangerous environment. They're like, oh well, this is my life forever. No one's ever gonna look at me the same just because I have this label as a felon.
There are certain crimes that you just can't necessarily come back from, and there are certain people that are too far gone. So I'm not saying that everybody just, oh, they just need a little therapy, they'll be fine. Like,
Right.
but I do think even the people that are in prison for horrific reasons still deserve to have some basic conditions met as humans. They shouldn't be subjected to really dangerous conditions. They shouldn't be, put in gangs. I think the people that really are too far gone probably need to just be put alone.
A lot of those places, they are supposed to be very limited to almost alone. But because of the fact that the crime rate is so high, they're overflowing.
I was going to say one reason the crime rate's so high is because these people are repeat offenders. They go to prison and, maybe for drugs or something, or, a robbery or they'll go to jail
But I
for,
mean, it's
for,
not
for
even
something.
that. It's also
And then
just
they come
because,
out worse people.
but it's not even that. It's not just that. It's also these people who are having to learn how to live in shitty environments before they even think of doing the thing that was a crime, whatever it may be. I mean, it could be they live in Compton, California, but some of these
And
people just don't even have that choice. They're
No.
forced to live this way, because of, like, say they had really shitty parents and they were forced into foster care or adoption, or say that they stayed with those shitty parents and those shitty parents taught them how to live a shitty life, or
Mhm.
the people that had to grow up and learn how to defend themselves at a very young age, that had to learn how to sell dope just to make money in order to put food on the table, people who can't get a job, or the people that sneak into our country for freedom and they get caught and then they get sent back to where they're from and then they get treated even worse.
Or yeah, or I mean, or they get treated even worse at the border.
I mean,
For,
yeah, exactly. I mean, literally, there's so many
sometimes those are kids too. So I mean,
there's
yikes.
so many different scenarios of how rehabilitation is needed. It's mainly just because of the fact that poverty right now is just awful. I mean,
And
and
it's
like I said,
increasing as the wealth inequality is continuing, as
it's
the
it's
people in the top
because
1% are getting richer and the people on the bottom are getting poorer and more desperate, which means more crime.
it's because nobody seems to care about anyone but themselves anymore.
Yeah.
It's like no one wants rehabilitation until it's themselves.
Yeah, they would be like, I don't want my tax dollars going to no rehabilitation for that person. And then, if they
And
end up
then
in prison, they'd be
something
like,
and
oh, I want that.
yeah, I want freedom. I want, I want to be able to go out and work. I want to be able to, go back to school, get my GED. I want to be able to do this. I want to be able to do that. I'm not trying to be controversial here, but it all just depends on our justice system because our justice system is what runs these facilities. And, I'm not going to sit here and say all cops are bad. Some of them are, and some of them are not. Some of them are wonderful people that actually want to help keep, their area safe, that actually want to help the people that they incarcerate become a better person so that when they do get out, they can make an impact on that person's life.
Someone is already at their lowest point. If they're doing a terrible crime and they're going to prison, that's probably their lowest point, at least so far. It's like kicking them while they're down because you're like, all right, well, you're already at your lowest point, but we're going to traumatize you by putting you in this terrible environment. We're going to set you up to where you're probably not going to be able to get any good jobs after you're out. And, financially you're screwed. And that's just not the type of mentality that you should have towards your citizens. By villainizing criminals, you're taking away the humanity aspect. And any of us, if our material conditions are not being met or our lives maybe went in a worse direction, that person being arrested, that could be us, any of us. It's very easy to cast judgment when you're the person who was born to a middle class family and you haven't had to deal with those types of issues. You haven't had to deal with drug addiction that might run in your family, or you haven't had to deal with having to steal food just to eat or just to feed your kids. So I mean, there's so many underlying factors, and at the end of the day, it's very easy to be like, well, I'm a good person, I wouldn't do that. But any person can turn to crime out of desperation.
There are people who get arrested just for being homeless. Imagine that. Hey,
Yeah, really.
I don't have anywhere to sleep, so I'm sleeping on this bus bench. And then they get arrested for loitering.
It's basically treating people like they're garbage. I think the fact that this movie is the sixth highest grossing film of all time. Yes, I did research that. And it's making billions and billions of dollars. That's great for Marvel or whatever financially, but I do think that a film this big that everyone is going to see or has already seen, the fact that a movie like this has this kind of message in it, I think is a really good thing. The ideas and themes that are represented in media have an adverse effect on what we think about and how we change our own viewpoints of the world. So the fact that, yeah, maybe this goofy movie about a guy that has spider powers and swings around, well, and wears a wrestler mask is kind of goofy. It's kind of silly. He fights a wizard, but at its core, it has this really cool message about rehabilitation and redemption and giving people second chances. And the fact that such positivity is being represented in a film that's so popular at a time in our nation's history where people are the most pessimistic, people are suicidal, people are giving up on America, they're giving up on their neighbor, they're giving up on people that have different opinions of them, they're giving up on family members, people are giving up and people are losing hope. But the fact that a film like this exists and it's as popular as it is shows that maybe we haven't truly lost all hope yet, that maybe we're just waiting for something to bring us back up.
It's almost like they were trying to use it like a cry for help, like an eye opener. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I could see that for sure.
I feel like, making someone just out to be this horrible person is just so sad, because we all go through such battles, and there's no telling what kind of battle they went through that made them do or be what they've done or who they are. And I feel like if they were given the right type of rehabilitation that they deserved, they would be able to overcome everything and be able to see, hey, I'm better than what I was, and I want to do better than what I've done. I want to fix it. I want to make it right.
We can always do better,
Better is
and
achievable.
you can always be better than how you were before. It can be very hard if you don't have support. So I think offering support to other people really can make a huge difference. I always sort of try to live by the belief that each person you talk to every day is affected by even the smallest nice thing you could do for them. And if you do one nice thing, one small thing, it doesn't have to be big. You don't have to be donating $1,000 to charity or anything. You could even just like, I mean, if you could, that'd be great. But if you even just like holding the elevator for someone, or having a pleasant conversation, or asking someone about their day, or listening, or maybe bringing someone some food or something, like, people really do notice the little things, and they really do care about the little things. And I mean, it's kind of the adverse thing. The opposite too is, if you have a lot of little moments where you're kind of a dick, then that might make someone feel like their life is worse. And we're all very emotional people. We're all very easily affected by small things. At least most of us are. I know I am. And any little nice moment of kindness could turn someone's day around from, oh, that was one of the worst days ever, to, you know what, it started off bad, but things got better and I feel better. And it's good to know that people care about me. And I think that's important, dude.
It kind of wraps it all up into that saying that we used to be told as kids: treat others how you want to be treated.
Yeah, for real. And it's very easy when you have a culture that's very focused on negativity, and it very much feels like, the other saying of, no good deed goes unpunished. They even say that in this movie, actually. It's very easy to feel like doing the right thing and being good to others is pointless because they'll never appreciate it. And at the end of the day, yeah, maybe Peter caring about the villains got his aunt killed, but also he did redeem them. He did save them. And he even became a better person in the process. And Aunt May was willing to sacrifice that. She made the choice, and she would have been proud of the person he became. So I think we all have to try to live more like the people we want to be, and live more like the type of person you would be proud to say you are.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for listening to Art Equals Life. We'll be bringing more art and life-filled topics to y'all in the future. So keep an eye and an ear out for that.
Thank you,
All
and
right.
good night,
Peace out.
Girl Scout.